Thank you, everybody, and welcome to the Health and Safety Committee meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. And I don't have the flag, so I think we're going to forego the pledge. I think we're going to have it a couple times later on anyway. So here we go. We have, as our first agenda item, welcome, Mr. Kearney. This is the first time at this meeting.
Yes.
The board decided for this year, because health and safety has been such a huge issue in this state, that we would have you present at this committee meeting. So hopefully that works out with your schedule, and we gave you notice. So we are going to have you first on the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. As you know, Madam Chair, George Glover, who we work in tandem, is on the screen there as well. So you have two documents in front of you. One is the Government Relations Strategy Plan for 2020. And I believe, Madam Chair, you approved this when you were on finance maybe right. Last time. And I think maybe Member Messer, you might have also been on at that time. I'm not sure. Member Bowers, this may be the first time you're seeing this document. I know it was included in the packets at board meetings, but right. Up close and personal. So anyway, George and I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to see this, and maybe your committee might have different thoughts, but it's a 3-page document that kind of outlines the work that we do on behalf of the public schools. So if you take a gander at it. So for the month of February, this is a little bit of a different reporting style. So what we've done in the first part is just pick some articles from across the state or that people are talking about across the state with respect to public education and Cincinnati public schools. So many of these you may know, but just to raise your awareness about them. And then on the second page, what we've done is we've provided a list of the House leadership, the Senate leadership, because that's the upper chamber and the better chamber, quite frankly. And in bold, we've placed members of the local delegation, and then it tells you 25 and 8 up the top. That tells you the number of Republicans and Democrats in that chamber. And then below that, we have the House leadership. Cupp is the speaker, as you know, 65 Republicans, 35 Democrats, and then Bill Seitz is in the Republican leadership in the House. And if you turn to the next page, we've gone to the committees that are most relevant to educating K through 12. House Finance has a subcommittee that deals with primary and secondary education. Those are kind of micro committees that deal with specific issues in the budget that relate to primary and secondary education. And those are the 5 members of that committee. Then the House Primary and Secondary Committee is chaired by Gail Manning, who I served with her in the Senate. But also on that committee is Catherine Ingram, and as you know, Catherine Ingram is a former Cincinnati Public School board member. So she's on that committee, and that's very good for us. Then in the Senate, Lou Blessing is a local member. We have a very good relationship with him, and we are scheduled to have him present to this committee or to maybe it's a joint committee that you're doing. I'm not quite sure. George would know the details on that. But he is going to present, and that will be an opportunity for you as board members to ask him questions about education policy. Then on the following page are a list of bills, and you all are familiar with this. What we do is we take some of the bills that are really the most important bills and list them here just so that you'll know what's going on and you'll be able to look at them. And happily for us, HB1, that's formerly, as you would know it, Cupp-Patterson, but that is the bill to analyze the school funding system. So that's a really good thing for public education in Ohio. It means that we'll be front and center in terms of issues over the next biennium. The Speaker, Cupp, is really committed to this bill, and so that's really excellent. So outside of outside of the budget bill, which is HB 110, I think this will be the second most important bill of this biennium. And so that's really good for us because we get to talk about education and about CPS's leadership and ingenuity at the State House. George, I think, has something that he would like to share with respect to HB1. And I don't know if you can unmute him. He should be up.
Can you hear me, Eric? Can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks, Eric, and thanks, Madam Chair. I just want to give you some additional background information on House Bill 1. As Eric pointed out, it is the old House Bill 305, the Patterson bill. It's not insignificant, of course. It was introduced as the first bill in the Ohio House. It certainly is not insignificant that the Speaker of the House is strongly behind this bill. It has begun to have hearings already in the Ohio House of Representatives. When Governor DeWine introduced his budget bill, he clearly made it known to the state legislature that he is anticipating the Ohio General Assembly to fill that blank in the Ohio budget with something like House Bill 1. So that's why you see a place marker, if you will, or a place marker in the budget, because the anticipation is from the administration and from the Ohio General Assembly that House Bill 1 will eventually find itself woven into the state budget, which by Constitution has to be enacted, signed into law by June 30th. So as Eric pointed out, this is going to be a very busy time in the Ohio General Assembly, not just for the budget bill, but for House Bill 1. Briefly looking at it, while it's very similar to the bill that was introduced last year that passed the Ohio House, did not pass the Ohio Senate because of financial concerns, it's anticipated that there will be future amendments to this bill. There is still concern by the Ohio Senate about the price tag, although at this point it looks like it will probably be phased in over 3 bienniums or a period of 6 years. Nevertheless, there's going to be a lot of discussion about the overall price tag of the bill. On that point, we are fortunate to have a number of members, as Eric pointed out, from Southwest Ohio who sit on key committees, not the least of which is State Senator Bill Blessing, who sits on the Senate Finance Committee, who will be a voice in this process, who also serves as Vice Chairman of the Senate Public and Secondary Education Committee as well. So I think we're well positioned to have our voice heard in Columbus in both the House and Senate, Democrat and Republicans, on this bill. We intend to closely monitor it and look for a lot of activity in the whole area of school funding, because the expectation is finally, after about 20 or 23 years, that they might finally pass something that will make this whole issue constitutional in the state of Ohio. That's a brief overview. If there are any questions, I'll feel free to try to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. Are there any questions from committee members? Yes, Mr. Messer.
Yes. So, is Mr. Brenner the one from Lima?
Brenner is he from Lima? But he was the one last year who introduced the bill that we had to work so hard to get, for lack of a better word, killed, because he wanted to change transportation where kids couldn't take public transportation if they were below 8th grade, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just curious. There was clearly somebody who's not an advocate of public schools. That was, I remember he was from Lima, and then I thought I read that he had been put as chair of a committee.
Yeah, here, I'll find out where he's from. George is from Lima.
Eric, let me try to clarify that. Senator Brenner is the former chairman of the House Education Committee, now chairperson of the Senate Education Committee. He's from Central Ohio. Okay. Both the current president of the Ohio Senate, Matt Huffman, and the current speaker of the Ohio House, Bob Cupp, are from Lima.
Even worse. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
If I could just add one more thing. We're putting together, Dan Hoying, General Counsel, is putting together testimony and responding to, where's the bill? Oh, the Brinkman bill about transfer of property and to declare an emergency. That's House Bill 117. And then we're also watching these bills that are dealing with testing, whether there's going to be testing at the end of the year because of the pandemic and the impact on the state report cards and the broadband, having broadband available for more of the state of Ohio. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Bowers.
Did I just hear about a House bill regarding the broadband that I thought was passed? Is that correct? I thought I received information about.
I'm not sure if it was passed. George, do you know if it was passed?
Yes, the House has, both the House and Senate have passed legislation authorizing appropriations for broadband. It has not passed the Ohio General Assembly. Finally, no, it has been signed by the governor. The expectation is something will pass fairly quickly, be signed by the governor. In addition to that, the governor included in his state budget $250 million for broadband as well. So there are really two separate revenue streams we're looking at when it comes to broadband in Ohio.
Right. So thank you for that, Mr. Bowers.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I know last year we invested some good time, energy in articulating our position on the former Cupp-Patterson bill to members of the Ohio General Assembly and certainly to those members in Hamilton County. As this bill begins to gather more steam in Columbus, do we want to revisit that opportunity to again put our position in writing going forward?
Yes. Do the committee members agree I'm answering for both?
Can you clarify what he was saying?
Oh, that's right. Ms. Bowers was not present for that when we discussed it in finance. So can you explain it to Ms. Bowers what we plan to oppose and why?
I'll be glad to. Oftentimes you're asked to testify or present written testimony and or oral testimony in Columbus on a particular piece of legislation or a bill. Last year, because of the popularity and the notoriety of House Bill 305, we did in fact submit testimony and provide written communications to our legislators about the impact of that bill, mostly positive to CPS. I'm suggesting that with House Bill 1 being reintroduced and it being such a very lively item in Columbus for the next 6 months, we may want to visit that approach again and put something in writing, either testimony or a letter to our legislators, outlining the positive aspects of House Bill 1, but also delineating any concerns we have as well. Because at some point, I am sure we'll be asked what our position is on House Bill 1. So I hope that helps a little bit.
It does. Thank you.
Awesome. So what I would, unless either of you speak, what I would suggest is that, we three of us, if you two are in favor of the recommendation to oppose, that we also move this to Finance Committee because that's, Treasurer Wagner, I'm sure if you want to testify or at least be part of the testimony, the written testimony, so we could run it by finance as well. Is that agreeable to you?
That makes sense.
Okay, so I think Phyllis is remote and she's taking notes. That's what I'm thinking. Who's taking notes?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. I thought you let me know.
I'm here. I got that action.
Okay, so you got that action. Thank you, Ms. Davis.
You're so welcome.
Madam Chair, if I could, one last point.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Glover.
We have found in the past it's helpful to invite key members of the Ohio General Assembly from Southwest Ohio, particularly Hamilton County, to visit our committees. I know last year we had a very positive meeting with State Senator Bill Blessing. It's entirely up to you, of course, but it's something I think has been productive and positive, not just for the legislators, but also for the CPS board committees as well. And if you want to pursue that objective again this year, let us know. We'll be happy to help facilitate some of those meetings.
Yes.
Yeah, well, don't we have one that's being
Yeah, it's
Meeting
already
scheduled
scheduled.
then for Senator Blessing?
Yeah, Thursday, March 18th, 4 o'clock,
Okay.
the CPS Finance Committee.
Yes, thank you. And if we can, I would like to suggest that it be a joint meeting of finance and health and safety. So that,
What time is that meeting?
what time again, Mr. Glover?
Thursday.
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
Or you could join remotely.
Yeah.
But I think it would be helpful for this committee, I'm on both though, for this committee to be part of that meeting as well, if that's agreeable
Okay.
to this.
We'll get
members.
voice about it. Okay.
But we could work out the
Okay.
logistics. Okay, yes, so that's another action item, Ms. Davis, is that Health and Safety would like to join finance in the meeting with Senator Blessing and have a joint meeting of Health and Safety and Finance.
Okay, I've got it.
Unless the full
Madam-
board wants to do it, but
Madam
right,
Chair,
it's what we're recommending.
Madam-
Mr. Messer.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I remember when I was on finance before and we were working together. It's great to see you, Mr. Glover. I see my neighbor all the time. Well, a little more when it's warmer and he's walking, but I remember we were trying to set up meetings to get together with some of the legislators, and it's like, well, where can we get them and where can we go? And maybe we'll go to somebody's office. And I think taking advantage of a crisis with the implementation of Zoom, it doesn't matter if they're in Columbus or whatever, I think it would be great to set up a roundtable discussion like we had talked about 2 years ago, but using the Zoom platform. And it seems to me like it would be a lot easier because you're not worried about who's in the district or not. And I think that would be a great accomplishment this year, is to allow us to maybe give a little dog and pony show as the board and with the administration to those folks, and at least begin to put the faces with the names on both sides of the table. I think that'd be a great opportunity.
Okay.
So this is further down. We'll do the meeting with Senator Blessing and then plan a roundtable, and we'll ask Ernie and Mr. Glover to help organize that at a time that works for the legislators.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the meeting on March 18th with Senator Blessing is a virtual meeting with him.
Okay.
Great.
Works better.
Yes, it does. Very good. Okay, anything else on legislative? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Kearney, and Mr. Glover. Thank you for presenting today, and we look forward to seeing you at this committee on a monthly basis.
And it's this Monday at 4 o'clock each time.
Yes. Now, there's one exception. We've been trying to schedule it prior to a board meeting, and there's an exception when there isn't an available board meeting. So Ms. Davis will send you the full schedule.
Okay.
But it's generally 4 o'clock once a month. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good seeing you.
Yeah, great to see everybody.
Very
Thank you.
interesting. So our next agenda item is reviewing resolution approving yellow school bus stops for the 2021 school year. And that's Mr. Johnson. Is Mr. Johnson on virtual?
Hello, it's Pam Williams. I'm representing Mr. Johnson today.
Oh, welcome.
Hi, hello everyone.
So,
Hi.
The resolution that you received was for Mount Airy School to add an additional stop, and this was for the promote social distance for her population that's in that Hawaiian Terrace area.
Very populous, right? Is that the reason?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
It's a very populous area, and we have many children, so we need an additional bus to accommodate the distancing.
Correct, yes.
Will the second bus be arriving at the same time and dropping off at the same time as the other bus?
It's not an additional bus, it's just an additional stop. So it will provide additional spacing for the students for COVID, being at the existing stops that they have.
What
They had to add I'm sorry, go ahead.
Ms.
I'm
Bowers.
sorry, it's an additional bus and stop.
An additional stop because
Stop.
there's
No.
only one bus stop.
Oh,
They
too
were-
many at one bus stop,
Oh.
thank you, okay, got it.
Thank you.
Yes, that makes sense.
We get it now.
They're all.
Too many clustered up, okay, I got it.
Okay,
That
no,
makes sense.
perfect. So this is coming before us this evening, is that correct?
Yes.
Is it
Yeah, I
prepared?
saw that on
Yes.
the agenda, yeah.
So do committee members have any questions on the additional bus stop?
Nope.
Nope.
All right. So we're moving on to the next one, the committee work plan. I have hard copies. I know the board is anxiously, does anybody else need a copy of the work plan? I have a couple extras here. So this is,
Ms. Bates, do you have an extra one?
yes, I
Yes,
do.
actually, I too. Oh, yeah, no, you have that, no.
Thank you.
And as you know, with the other committees, we put this forward so that the board isn't assigning every month our work, only additional work as needed. So we will have a calendar here to rely upon with our health and safety. The one area, well, first of all, I wanted to ask if committee members have input.
Yes, I have an inquiry,
Okay.
just to be clear. In the bylaws, it looks like we have 12 responsibilities for the health and safety committee. And I think we left one off, sexual orientation was left off of the responsibilities. And then I didn't know if on the calendar, and I didn't know if this fell into something else, maybe a school, community schools, but alternative expulsion was not on there, and then positive school culture. And I was thinking that fell into, I didn't know where to put it on the schedule. I just know it wasn't really inclusive on the schedule. I didn't know where it fit though.
No, I agree. If they're in the bylaws, they should be 11 and 12. So 11 is sexual orientation, and what would number 12 be?
Well, actually, 4 is sexual orientation in the bylaws. And then number 12 was our student conduct,
Okay.
which is actually, I don't know where that is. Oh, it's number 6. Number 6 is student conduct. Number 4 was sexual orientation. And then that led me to look at the calendar and saw that alternative to suspension and exposure and positive school culture regarding, I have student conduct, but then really dynamics of the school building was not on our calendar.
The student conduct, A to E, A to F,
And then positive school culture
positive school
was
culture.
not in the calendar, not necessarily on the,
Okay,
yeah.
so that needs to be added, the calendar. Positive school culture, to you, is that the same thing as review of discipline?
I think they're separate.
Yeah,
They are separate, yeah, they're separate, yeah. That's student conduct, to me, positive school culture is kind of like the whole thing of the school. It's like kind of the vibe and the dynamics in the building. But conduct is different to me than that. They're two separate things.
because I would like to suggest, since it would fall under that general area, to add discipline, because I know, and it's been several years when we had called it a discipline committee. It may be called something different
We
now.
still have it.
Yeah, okay, that the board, actually, I was on it, and I think Eileen Cooper Reed was on it too. We would get data from that. And I don't know that there's a home for that data review, and it seems appropriate that it would land here.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, so, and I don't think we need to change the bylaws. I think
It goes up under that. Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
so I would add that, review of, review of discipline. Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Messer.
And that, we had this board discussion, but I remember that, because that's not my area of expertise, but I did kind of, positive school culture means that and I just saw the conduct was like kind of part of making that happen. And so we had a conversation with the meetings, and I told about when I drove to, what is it called? The site where the kids who got expelled.
ADS.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whew. I wouldn't let my kid walk in there. And it just like, didn't feel positive, didn't feel anything like, and so the question is like, what happened after that discussion? Is there a review of, does that represent the best of CPS? Is shipping kids out to that place that feels like, I thought it was going to the edge of the earth. Is that a part of what we want to be? And I wasn't sure, like, does that fit in here? Is there a review going on with that? What was the follow-up from that discussion?
Yes, Ms. Fontaine.
So as you all may be aware, this year ADS was suspended due to COVID.
Right,
So
yeah.
we currently don't have it. Our Assistant Superintendent Murphy is the one who oversees ADE, but because it is on the discipline continuum, if you will, we've been working closely with Assistant Superintendent Murphy, along with Positive School Culture and Dr. Bunger and Dr. Fudge to reimagine ADE, so to be able to take advantage of all and be able to really think through what that could be. So we've been having those conversations and old short, new short conversations actually, and thinking through supports we can put in place.
Yes, Ms.
Is
Bowers.
there, and I'm probably thinking too far on the New Shore, but is there, I don't know if that discussion included collaboration with teaching staff regarding a win-win curriculum while we're at ADE? Because I've been there several times. As a clinician, I've seen clients at ADE. I didn't think it was as bad as this. His visit was a little bit different than mine. I know the paint and the brightness of it, all that changed a lot of the look when I went in a second time from years past. But the paint was great.
It was
Green and
definitely
white.
outdated when I was there.
Yeah, but nevertheless, making an intentional, I guess, kind of an effort to help change that goes with basically restorative. Just, kind of that thought. Is there any ideas of involving teachers and maybe that process along with administration? That would be ideal. Okay.
Yeah, so there are teachers on the team.
Okay.
And as well as CFT representation, as well as administrative representation and central office folks. And so we're really taking a look at a 3-year sort of.
Okay.
Where do we want
Transition.
to be? Yes, ma'am. So where do we want to be in terms of mental health supports? Where do we want to be in terms of behavioral supports? Where do we want to be in supports and the way that children also transition back into their home? So we're working on it in a phased approach, but excited about the opportunity to do it.
Okay, thank you. Anything else under student conduct, AES, discipline, that item that we're adding? And we're adding that in one point.
One thing, yeah.
But it could be separated on the calendar. And Ms. Bunte, when the discipline data becomes available, correct? So can you appropriately place those items on the calendar so we receive them when they become available and it's timely?
Sure. So it might be interesting to just, I'm looking at my notes here, to think about, do you want to do discipline on a quarterly basis? So then to take a look at discipline.
If we're looking at data, I think that would be great. Yeah.
Is that agreeable to you, Mr. Messer?
Yeah, I think in the context of this, as I pass, I literally was like, what? When I heard that student achievement had the people come in that were talking about resource officers, of how that ended up in student achievement and not here. Because all the things that they're kind of complaining about is, disproportionate number of this and there, To me, it's like we're having this conversation and then this is going on over here. It's like, well, what's that over there? And I'm like, so why is that not in this committee? And then if it is, I think that affects then do we as a health and safety committee get to engage with this student group that could help us inform, where we could get updates on their work, because that's the other thing. I know that we've had some people that have come and spoken on behalf, but we have an official group that we've not heard from. And would that be an appropriate group to bring here, who are making recommendations on health and safety of our students and in this discipline area? And so then if other students, and they can come here and hear what their fellow, I think we would create a forum then where, because I think we all want to be best in class in setting a new path on discipline. It's not going to be done through somebody yelling at us who's actually not even part of the plan at public comment. We've got to actually get it into a working group. And I think this is the ideal place to do it. And to me, that could be a really important purpose of this committee, do something that is hot topic in everybody's mind.
Well, if I
You
may.
want me to? I'll let you explain.
Yeah, I was going to say, Superintendent Mitchell convened a group that was representative.
That's the group I'm saying
Yes.
that we can bring in here.
So and she gave us her best thoughts, and that's kind of where it ended. So you're saying we can continue the conversation with the larger and group that's more representative of our high school.
Yeah, and I think, I think there's the Young Activist Coalition. I've actually heard there's 4 or 5 other smaller groups like that. Well, all those are great, and I think they're all well-intended, but we have to work within our systems or we won't get anything done. So if we have that committee giving us updates on their work, then all those other groups can hear from that, and maybe they'll say, oh, somebody else is working on this.
But I don't.
But I still don't understand why that's in student achievement, why they are having those presentations. So maybe this is an opportunity for us to line as a board of where that goes. But I think discipline and all these things are squarely here.
I'll reflect on that. Initially, the Young Activist Coalition reached out to Board Member Morowski, who in turn reached out to me, and I suggested that they come to health and safety. But since they came to me, I was open to hearing, and then
You're on that one too, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm the chair of.
Oh, God, I didn't even know that, yeah.
No, but that's how it started. December last year, and it was recommended that it fell in health and safety because that's where all the discipline. But because I had already agreed to it, I went back and told them, and then I left it with chairperson Melanie to decide if she wanted to have it here. And then I don't know what happened with that. I think I mentioned that when I was doing the report that was recommended, but I don't know what happened with that result.
Okay.
Well, I thought I heard the recommendation be that we bring in the Young Activists, which is like pretty much one school and a handful of students. I like the idea of having the larger, more inclusive group,
Absolutely.
and I would be in favor of that. I was not in favor of 4 people giving a presentation when we can we could get the input from the other students in all of our high schools and, take their input, our data from the district as far as discipline, and then match that against data in districts that are like ours across the country, that we can get that information, I'm sure, from the Council of Great City Schools. And that way we'll kind of know, where do we fall, good, bad, or not, what other districts are doing in this area. And, and have a productive conversation and get data that is broader, than, and I know we have expert data miners in our administration that can do that for us, correct? No, I think that's a great idea, Mr. Messer.
Yeah, and then, and I think to raise it up a bit, that is one thing that the group that Laura has convened is working on, but it's not inclusive, or not the only thing. But the second question is very specifically on the topic of school resource officers. So there's this big key question, you should do something, you should do something, you should do something. What I have heard of the community is, please don't assume that, and this was an African-American mother with a couple of kids. Please don't assume that we, as a community, based on a couple of people saying that, all want that. And I was given some very interesting examples, things I would never have thought of. So I think there's a much broader stakeholder group that has to be engaged. So does that fall here?
I think it could, and I think we stated that it's been a broader. It hasn't been just to this one.
Right, but I don't feel like I've seen a plan like, all right, here are the different stakeholder groups you need to engage. Here's how we'll reach out and hear data. Maybe there's a steering committee, like we had that steering committee for the equity and diversity and equity policy. Where they kind of helped advise. So could we have a group of parents and some teachers and let them kind of work through a proposal? Like, do you think we need to reboot it? Well, if we do need to reboot it, what's that way? Or if it just we need to make enhancements, we need to change their title, we need to change what they wear, we need to provide some additional training. But I feel like that's a question mark out there that if somebody says, all right, there's been tons of conversations, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm not sure. But if it came here, I think it would help keep some, work plan.
Because if the end result or the action plan from their presentation is, it's just stalled. I mean, student achievement, heard it, we acknowledged it, we gave, we presented it to the board in our minutes. I mean, that's kind of where it stopped.
Yeah.
But I do think that there needs to be the next step, and I do think it falls in this committee.
Yeah, and so that could be.
Well, when we receive the quarterly updates, that's when we would invite the group in. But the group, I would think.
More groups. More groups than just.
Right, a larger
group. Right.
So I'm hearing that we need to ask the administration to reconvene that group. There may be different students now, because of transitions and some may be seniors and there's only, little over 1 quarter left. But, and be prepared and ready to go, maybe at the beginning of the school year, but still collect the data and report the data to us. But here we are, almost March, April, and then halfway through May. It's going to be kind of hard to get it together, I think, in the next month. But if we work with this group to organize it over the summer, we still get the data on a quarterly basis, whether or not, and then when school starts up again, we hit the ground running with this group. Does that sound? Yes, Ms. Fuente.
May I ask a clarifying question? So I'm not sure who the group is. So I will convene whoever. Is it the group that Laura's meeting with?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
we're talking about a collaborative.
So I think that is the student group.
Right.
And then I think, as we work through, so they're going to give some input, but then a couple of their members, and we can define a working group for the assessment and reimagining of, resource officers, whatever that's going to be called.
Oh, the resource. Okay.
That we would create one that has because what we did for the equity policy, we said, well, let's see, it should have some teachers. We kind of listed all the groups.
Who should be involved at the table.
And then brought these groups, and then they came, and it was great feedback. And things that if we hadn't engaged that stakeholder, would we have gotten that?
Right.
Yeah.
I apologize. I was conflating discipline and SROs together. So,
regarding that.
So I apologize. I know that SRO's Assistant Superintendent Murphy has done a lot of work in that space. I just don't want to speak to it because I know she's had parent convenings and a lot of different stakeholder involvement, but I just don't know all of the details. So we certainly can provide that for you all so that you're aware of what's going on. But for the quarterly discipline rhythm, we certainly have that data. It looks glorious this year. But we are in very much a rhythm. But I think the quarterly report out would be perfect. And then with that combination, to Board Member Bauer's point, we can couch that in all of the SEL work that we're doing to be able to.
And I think this is such an important point that you just made. So Ms. Murphy is kind of up and running on that. And I don't think she's doing anything wrong, but something that's been raised to the level that it's been, I think I wouldn't want her to get too far down the path without saying, all right, board, what are the priorities for this? Okay, we want to make sure that there's a representative group of stakeholders. Because let's say she does a whole presentation and it's like, well, did you talk to this group? Oh, no. And it's coming, I sent it to Ms. Bowers after we had a meeting. But as we're, if we call out something that needs to be an initiative, and it's like a board level and not just something that, hey, the district's going on here, but something that's been brought to our attention, I think we have to have a process where it's like, great, problem statement has been defined. Now, who has to be at the table when we're making this decision? So if the administration is going to be making a proposal, I would want us to say, I would need input from these 5 stakeholder groups. Great. And so as that, I would want to be able to say, hey, here's what we heard from our stakeholders. And then based on that and this, here's our recommendation. Because I think what happens is, I think there's some work going on in the background of hearing from stakeholders, but the aha for me with us, whether we go back to school or not, virtual or not, we haven't had a really thorough view of parent perspectives. I can't say, well, I think we can for last fall, because we did one, but I couldn't say, if we made this decision, 78% said they would approve of that option, or this option, or whatever. And I think, to me, that has been kind of the miss as we're making decisions. It is absent of me getting a pulse of, what do our teachers think about that as I have to vote on it? What do our parents think as I vote on this? What do students think as I vote on this? And we're kind of voting on something, but it's not with the perspective of, and here's how we got to that point. And so using this as an example, if she came forward with the presentation, I'd say, ooh, probably should have started, what are we trying to solve here? And who should be included? And then now let's execute the work. So it's not after the fact like, oh, well, hold that, we got to go find you from. So I think we'll have that conversation. Hopefully it'll be on the next meeting, kind of that, how we make these decisions, and after we get after some of the work, what that process could look like, at least the draft of that. But I think that is an area of opportunity for us that will more connect our stakeholders along the way, because we are definitely hearing that in the community. And sometimes it's not that we're not asking, it's we're not advertising as much. And sometimes it's just important to announce that you did these surveys as the output, so that people can understand.
So now we're trying to avoid July because everybody gets a break in July. But can you pencil in the months where we'll be receiving those discipline reports?
So I did them by quarter.
Okay.
So if you look at January, well, I'll do them in order. So October is the end of first quarter, typically. January is second quarter. March is third quarter. And May is fourth quarter.
So we could expect, so we would have reports in October, January, March, and May. Okay, so we would expect one at the next meeting. And then in addition to that, you will contact the superintendent and find out the status of that group and help either recruit, organize, pull together a group that can attend quarterly at these meetings when the data is presented and give their perspectives. And in addition to that, there will be some, and this shouldn't be that hard, some research from like districts.
We have those.
Yeah. And contact the Council of Great City Schools to see if they have any white papers on this, that, so we have some additional resources.
So,
Go ahead, Ms. Bowers.
yes, so Susan, were you at the SAC meeting, the last one?
No.
Okay. Assistant Superintendent Murphy was there, committee member Messer, and she gave information in that conversation with the coalition, the Young Activist Coalition. So there was some dialogue. And so just to be clear, Chairperson Bates, when you said the superintendent would get information from what committee is she getting that from? Her administrators, from the group of the young individuals she's working with? What data you tell the team that you're telling her to convene?
Well, the larger group of the young students.
Okay, so that might be inclusive of her inviting young activists and her group that she worked with in that report that we got. Because
Right.
when I hear committee member Messer say to be more inclusive of all parties at the table, I'm thinking that would be everyone at the table. Okay.
Yes.
So I know that Dr. Bunger has also been working with them to get their thoughts and to help influence decision-making at the administrative level as we've been moving along. So I just wanted to make sure that y'all were aware of that too, so that them appearing here would not be their only voice, if that
Right.
makes sense. Because I do think that it's helpful for them to see the rhythm of the monthly report, so they're not, so that they have time to reflect on and not have to necessarily react.
Right.
Is that agreeable?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think we have a plan.
Now,
We had a plan.
so the only thing is there an overarching here where I thought this group was going to be helping to guide us through the pandemic? So is that an overarching? Because, Fauci says the 2020, well into 2022, we're all going to be, so at least all of 2021, we're dealing with some level of the pandemic.
He corrected that on CBS this morning, though.
What he said?
He said he didn't want us to feel like that he was saying, yes, 100% of that. He was just saying that's a possibility.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
But my belief is there is going to be a percentage of the population who are still going to be nervous. Some who haven't taken the vaccine and refuse to. And I think, the article I read on Friday is the schools that figure out how to get their kids in person and figure out an option for virtual learning that closely mirrors their live instruction experience will win. And I think the aha from that is based on the parents that there is a percentage who said, we're not going back even next year. Okay, because you refuse the vaccine, so we're not going back. That's the decision we made. So are we going to still need to be reporting all of this and be thinking about our options, through this year? And should that be, I think, kind of a principal driver of this committee, or is that full board and not coming from the committee?
For the in-school safety?
Hmm.
So that's part of the committee responsibility and school safety, and that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I just think that it's like to be crystal clear to the public and everybody else, like, is this the working committee that deals with that, or is that just full board and not specifically the home?
Well, the full board receives the information, but the full board hasn't been discussing.
Yeah, so for example, I would like to know, what I don't know is, what are the health criteria right now that would allow us to go to 3 feet?
That's a full board discussion.
Yes.
But the question is it discussed here and a proposal made? Or is why we spin and spin and spin is it's all just high level and we just kind of keep going because there's not like a committee working to approve it. It'd be like if we were doing some of the things we do in finance and put it into the board, it would probably just go and people would say it's crazy. So is this the working group area that can say, hey, we think, based on what we're hearing, this is maybe we take that on the board and say, here's a recommendation. I'm just being provocative to say, is that a way forward versus trying to turn the full board into a working group that just seems to go on and on without any, I don't ever feel like I leave with an answer. So I'm trying to figure out where can we have the working group, and usually that's in committees, at least I've seen, like trying to do the equity policy, for example, at the full board, what a big chaos. Different opinions and everybody keep talking and doing whatever versus we were able to really say, okay, what are the criteria we need when we were in the policy committee? And there's not that kind of discussion time because it's always like, well, guys, you got to be quick. 2 minutes, 1 minute. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, go. Next topic. We didn't have it. We couldn't build a plan. I don't know what, So I'm just being provocative to say, does it belong here? And if not, then let's pull it out completely.
I don't think we can pull it out completely, but I think that we're talking about the equity policy. of urgency in a pandemic. I think that's two totally different things. Equity is intentional. There's a beginning, there's an end. With the pandemic, it's ever moving. And so I don't, you know what I mean, as far as the what we're doing and decision. I don't think that you can put them in the same thing. Nor, I mean, we can put a proposal in to the board, and they may say no. I mean, I don't know. I think it's a full board discussion. I don't think it should be here and we decide and then we move it forward. I think it's different than the equity.
Well, and I think that's why we have been completely kind of a mess, is because there's not a working group who's at least saying, here's something to respond to with the superintendent having had at least some input from a working group. It's like we get it and it's like, then we run out of time. And what do we really get to? Then we just vote on something. Versus, like, if this was the opportunity for the administration to say, hey, let's set some criteria or whatever, and then they go off and make their recommendations or whatever, like the criteria. So we've heard lots of people say, I don't know the criteria, I don't know the criteria. It's never going to be on a full board meeting to have the criteria. Now, we could have something presented, but is that the way? Or should there be at least some board input? What would you like to see in the criteria? What would make you feel comfortable? Well, we don't have that. So what we then get is superintendent gives the criteria, maybe people disagree and whatever,
Right.
and then we just, again, there's not that working group. And I get the pandemic's different, but there could be different anything coming out. You have to have a process where I think that, as I went back and was reading the bylaws, that's what committee work is supposed to do. In the respective areas, and if this is health and safety, it fits in that, and then bring forward things that the board can then respond to and act. And then the administration can then build the plans around. But somehow, some way, we have to get, for example, to what is our next decision point and what metrics will we use?
Can I ask, Ms. Sarah, is that part of the conversation you'll have in a few weeks?
Yes, so there was an assignment from Ms. Bates to report back on how do we measure risk and what metrics might be used going forward.
That's what I thought. Okay.
So what I'd like to say to that is, it'd be great for her to come back and give us that, but the board always has their own opinions. And so if you should first start, what are you specifically concerned about board members? And I think that people could share, if that was going to be a topic for this meeting, then people could share this, because what happens is we're not taking recommendations because people present something and say, well, I didn't have any input to that, so I'm voting for this. Versus, what if we got people around the table to say, we're creating this, and frankly, time is of the essence, because if we're going to make a decision for Q4, we need to be able to say to the community, here's when we're going to be able to assess, and here's specifically what we're looking at. Well, I think good decision-making starts with good input from the stakeholders, and if the board's voting, they have to be at least one of the stakeholders. And I have yet to be asked before a vote what things are important to me as I'm making a decision. And I think that's a very interesting conversation for our board to have. And so would that be best at a committee or at a board meeting? You see what I mean?
Could that be something that's presented and we discuss at board matters?
Well, except we already made the assignment.
Yes. Yeah.
So to backtrack and put it in committee would delay it. I mean, we could see the recommendation.
Right.
And if the board members are all over the place, we can request that it be assigned to committee.
Okay.
Is
Okay.
that?
Yeah, well, okay.
Because, the recommendation was already made, or the assignment, and it's going to full board. But if it ends up the way Ryan's describing, that
If we can recommend it come back to us for a more in-depth discussion.
right, and we could discuss it, and then it'll be, then it could be presented. Phyllis is gonna slap her forehead right now, and I don't even see her. If we discuss it here, then we could bring it to the board that day.
Yeah. But I think this is a great example of a process improvement, because you can't blame somebody for voting against something they didn't have any input on when they're the decision maker. And if we're voting, that means ultimately we're the decision maker. And so I think it's good for anybody to first ask the decision makers, what are your expectations? What would you like it to have? And there's a great book called Schoolhouse of Quality And they said, great, here's your school plans, and it's a parable. And everybody was mad as heck. Well, you want a new school, but you didn't ask me what I wanted in it. And you built a totally different school. Everybody's mad. Yeah, you built a school, but it had nothing to do with what we envisioned. And I think that is the lesson here is, are we hearing enough from the stakeholders? And I think the board is a good stakeholder. But then also, as a board, that I want to make sure the other stakeholders, including what do our teachers think? What do our parents think? And what do our students think? And, I had a conversation with a woman who is a CPS parent, who is an old J&J colleague, who is an expert in market research. When she handed me, here's what your market research, this is what you should hear from your parents. And I was like, God, if we had that, how much easier would these last 9 months have been? So I think, this is an example of, does this bucket belong in health and safety, or are we going to just say pandemic planning and all that will stay at the full board? You have to start talking about other things at the full board, and maybe this becomes the working group that we could pivot so things can maybe move a little faster. And I would say perhaps this committee then could meet extra to help get through some of that stuff. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. But for this, because the assignment's made.
Yeah.
And it's going to be coming back to the full board, if there's a lot of discussion, can recommend, or you can say that,
Yeah.
we discussed it at committee, and since it's your idea, I could do it, but it's your idea. And there was consensus at the committee that we could take on the nitty-gritty work if during the board meeting, it was not a topic that, we could come to consensus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and going back to the example of the equity piece, like what I loved is the board members shared their thoughts with the committee, and then we were able to make sure they were baked in. But I felt like it really sped things up on that. Like it was like boom, boom. There wasn't any disagreements. Not that this is like not a totally different topic. You could have disagreements, but at least you're engaging people into giving some feedback and input. So then when they get their dinner delivered by the server, it's what they envisioned and the things that they like to eat, versus like, oh, yeah, that's not, I wasn't. So I think that's a way to maybe think through how we address them going forward plans. Because the pandemic, at least in some way, some fashion, will be, continuing.
So would it be new, or how would it fit on, if you go back to A, specific responsibilities, would it fit under any of these buckets, or do we need to add a bucket?
These are the buckets that are in the bylaws, unless you change the bylaws.
Can it fit under any one of these buckets?
I mean, I guess it has to be in school safety.
That would be the one I would think about.
Okay, well, let's put it under.
But is it also safeties in communities in which schools reside? Because it's like a community thing,
Well, but but we've always last decision making, we conversed about the layers of the Swiss cheese, and that sometimes the community numbers are not really in line with what we're putting into place.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be concerned about that one, other than just saying in school safety.
And yeah, I think in school safety is where we want it. Number 9, tell me if I'm.
About
came from
violence and things like that.
Yes, Mr. Ozzie Davis and I were in favor of having this because of unsavory activity outside of our schools,
Definitely
and
affected
how could
people.
that be controlled? And so that was very different than what we're discussing. But I think, Bowers, you're right. In-school safety can be inclusive of safety measures as a result of the pandemic. And we can add that now that we're meeting before the board meeting instead of after the board meeting, there's really no reason for you to report the data here and then report it an hour later.
Yeah.
So we're not having that discussion or presentation, but this would make more sense to discuss criteria and, ways that we coalesce feedback from the board, from stakeholders, from the administration.
Yeah,
Okay, so that'll go under in-school safety, correct? And would that be a recurring monthly? And if there's no information, we'll just say, we'll defer to the next month. You want to discuss that monthly during the pandemic?
Yeah, I think during the rest of this year, definitely.
Okay, so can we add that, a review monthly? And if you have good information, we'll discuss. And if it's like, well, we're going to do that at the board meeting in an hour, then we'll defer.
Right.
But it'll be somewhere, Mr. Messer.
Yeah, good.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that something that the administration can work with?
Because I'm guessing that might incorporate vaccinations for students and all the upcoming things that are still out there. Okay.
Right.
Okay, good idea. So when we receive that criteria, Mr. Messer, I'm going to leave it up to you to make the assignment. But knowing you have the support of the committee, correct?
Yeah, that's cool, because I knew that was made, and I was like, well, that was made for the whole group, so I know, but what you just said and how we can just follow up ongoingly, I think that we can, that's doable.
Okay, very good. So, that's going to be added, I think in March, we're finally going to be able to approve this work plan, correct? Anything else with the work plan that needs to be added, included, revised? Okay. So between Ms. Davis, Ms. Bunte, and Ms. Trimble Oliver, we have this all down, right? You guys are the best. And we're doing really well here. If we can get this done in 10 minutes, we'll even have to go over and have a little break. Our next agenda item is pedestrian safety.
Yep. So we do have an update on pedestrian safety today. Over the past year, we have been partnering with the City of Cincinnati, Ohio Department of Transportation, and a consultant named Tool Design. And we have a guest, Julie Walkoff from Tool Design, that will give you an update on all the work that has been going on over the past year in relation to the Vision Zero initiative, as well as Safe Routes to School, and our update to our school travel plan. Julie, are you there?
She is there. She's the one presenting the screen.
We can't hear you yet, Julie.
Still muted.
Want to try to unmute her, Rob?
We just unmuted you, Julie, if you could talk. You just muted yourself. There you go.
Now, who is Julie with?
Julie is with Tool Design, who is a
Okay.
consulting company that has helped facilitate our partnership with the city and ODOT.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Unmuted.
All right. Ms. Walkoff, you're on. And we can't hear you.
Julie, I'm going to try and mute you and unmute you again. See if it'll help. Julie, can you hear us?
Hear us, but we can't hear her.
Know how to change the microphone settings? I can certainly try to give the overview of the update. It would not be, would not be as in-depth as what Julie could give. So if you can hear me, Julie, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Or maybe Rob, you might have to present.
Yeah, that's okay. Julie, if you want to try and reconnect while we play the video for them,
Okay.
that might be a conductive way to do it.
Okay.
So, Julie, if you want to try and disconnect and reconnect again, we'll share the PowerPoint, and I'm going to play the video for them.
Yeah.
So
I can introduce the video. So during our work with Tool Design and an attempt to update our school travel plan, which is a requirement to be able to access the Safe Routes to School grant opportunities. We had a wonderful partnership with a teacher at Western Hills. You guys may remember we were invited to Western Hills for the Day of Action about a year ago, and we made a connection with the teacher that facilitated that Day of Action, and so he's been part of us developing our school travel plan, and he took his 8th graders from West High on what's called a walking audit around their school to help document and generate awareness of the things around their school that could help lead to pedestrian safety. And so it was a great opportunity. Mr. Demery was extremely excited and passionate about being able to do this for his students, and it has been added into our school travel plan and will be adopted as a potential link project through our social studies curriculum for other students to be able to do as well. So, you want to show the video, Rob?
Students from Western Hills University High School watched a walk audit near their school via video. ODOT's Tommy Arnold says it's exciting to see the students so engaged in this process.
So we want to know, what did they see every day? What would make their walk to school or walk home more safe? Or what would make them more willing to walk to school? We're hoping to hear directly from the students to hear what their feedback is.
But for teacher Jeffrey Demery and his students, this is more than just a class assignment.
We've had lots of crashes here over the last couple of years, including losing a student to a fatality. That's truly affected our entire school community. So the Safe Routes to Schools program is something that's dear to our whole entire school family, not just the faculty here and our administrators, but also the students and their parents.
The Safe Routes to Schools program targets millions of dollars each year to building sidewalks or other improvements to make it safer for students to walk and bike to school.
We can see you.
Yeah.
Here I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So we can go to the PowerPoint.
My screen again, or do you just want to play the video and I'll tell you when, or the presentation and I'll tell you when to advance?
Yes.
Because I can't hear you guys, but this is fine for now.
Can you hear us now?
Okay, you want to go ahead and put that first slide up? Okay, first of all, I apologize for this mix-up. I don't really know exactly what happened here, but we'll keep it going as best we can with what we have going on. And I can see what you guys have, and we can go from there. And if there's any questions, I don't know if you can interrupt me in the middle, but if you can, that would be great. If not, there'll be plenty of time at the end. So first of all, I just wanted to thank you for inviting me to present here today. It's an important initiative around the country, actually. And as you know, the school board passed the Vision Zero for Youth initiative a few years ago, and you were really one of the first communities to do that. And excuse me, and that shows your advancement in this. And hold on, because now my video went away. There we go. One second. Okay. Now I don't have video, so hopefully we're on the second or third slide. I'm just going to assume that we're on that second slide that talks about, that says 2019 school board, you passed the Vision Zero initiative. And that was, shortly after that 10-week period in 2018 when 13 Cincinnati public school students were hit by drivers. And I really appreciate the school board and specifically this committee for being so proactive and declaring CPS the first Vision Zero for Youth school district in the country. That declaration was an important step in improving safety for not just the school students, but for everyone in the community. And I'm just going to try to give a quick overview of what we've done. I know now you're a little shorter on time than we had thought, but this is really, I don't have to read everything, but as you can see, this is the steps that we took to develop the action plan, which we are still working on. So it's not quite finished, but we're very, very close to that finishing touch, putting those finishing touches on. A couple of things that we did. You already saw the video of the student walk audits, and that was actually something that was not really in the scope of what we were signed up to do. But after meeting a student, Jeff Demare from Western Hills University High School, he and I sort of got together and came up with this idea how we would really like to have more student input into the plan itself. And so we came up with this plan about how to put that together. And we use those student walk audits to sort of check our data and make sure that the types of things that we're recommending were the correct things. And the next thing we did was we prioritized schools, and I'm going to talk about that prioritization process in a minute. And then we developed a toolkit, and I'm going to talk about how prioritization and that toolkit work together. And then we're going to move on to the non-infrastructure. Sounds like a lot of stuff I'm going to cover, but it's really not going to take very long. And Sarah knows I could talk very fast when I need to. So for the school travel safety analysis, we did a system-wide assessment. So we checked for bicycles and pedestrian crashes, but that specifically involved a car, a bicycle or a pedestrian, and a youth. So that's one of the difference between the typical Vision Zero project that the Cincinnati City of Cincinnati has, and a Vision Zero for Youth initiative, which is what we're doing here. So we focus it on the youth, and the idea of Vision Zero is not that we're going to be able to get rid of every single crash, but the idea is to get rid of every crash that has a death or a serious fatality in it. So that's what we're focusing on here. And some of the variables that we looked at on different roads that may have more of a tendency to cause crashes are the speed limits. If it was, as you can see with the little chart over there, for cars driving at 20 miles an hour, 1 out of 10 youth are expected to maybe have a fatality. And it goes up where by the time you get to 40 miles an hour, it's 8 out of 10. So specifically, speed reduction is a major tenet of Vision Zero and a lot of traffic crash safety initiatives as well. Then we looked at where there was a lot of traffic on the road. So if there were roads that had more than 5,000 cars daily, that increased. And if it's more than 5,000 cars daily and the speed limit is 30 miles an hour or greater, that made even more of a difference in our data. So this part of it was mostly data-based, obviously. We looked at multi-lanes roads. If there's 3 or more lanes, does that make it more likely that there will be a crash? And we also looked at sidewalks. If there's not a sidewalk on either side, is that going to make it more likely? So we took all of those risk factors and all of that information and put it together. And I'm on the slide with the map now. And my computer won't advance, but all right, hold on. I don't know, maybe it's my problem. All right, so we're on the high risk rural roadways portion. And still not advancing. There it goes. So you should see the map now, and that map really shows where all of those crashes are within the school district. So, but for some reason I can't get to that map. All right, there we go. So it's all the crashes, and it's broken down by severity and categories, but you can't really tell that because it's such a small map. But another way to look at that information is to look at the results of the risk factors. And as you can tell by this chart, when there's 2 risk factors, it's more likely that you're going to have, or I'm sorry, 3 risk, if there's 3 risk factors, it's more likely that you're going to have a fatality or a serious injury. And actually, when it goes up to 4 risk factor, the number goes down a little bit. So what we did then was we looked at the school boundaries, and this is just an example of an analysis. So we took the school district and we drew a circle around it, which is a half a mile, which is really nationally what students are willing to walk or bike to school. So especially K through 8 students, when we put back in the high school students as we have here, that number goes up a little bit, but for the purpose of scoring and so forth, we use that half mile boundary. And it's also the distance parents will let their kids walk as well. So then the overlay part with the darker color in the middle, that sort of is the half mile boundary and then the school boundary within it. Now, we don't obviously have the exact school boundary because you have open enrollment, but we were able to they did some data, and they worked on the data to make these simulated boundaries. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word simulated. So they made these simulated boundaries, even though that's not exactly where each student might be coming from. So we kind of used those simulated boundaries to say this is the student that would be walking to that school. And we had to take that approach just due to the fact that you have open enrollment. Okay, then the next slide should say school prioritization. So the crash scores, the number of crashes within a half mile radius of the children. We took the crash score, the risk score, which is those 3 items that we talked about, which came out to be the most of note are traffic volume, speed, lane count, and sidewalks. And then we also developed a demographic score. And the demographic score, the purpose of that is just so we can have some socioeconomic factors in with our scoring to make sure that populations of colors or different educational attainment and poverty status and zero-car households were included and scored within our results. So go on to the next one, which is the school prioritization. So we factored everything and based each of those items on a 0 to 1 scale. And this is the prioritization that we came out with. And what we have here, you can see the schools that are outlined in black, they show the lowest scores in each section for each school. So it didn't always, and the yellow obviously is the highest scores. So it didn't always line up exactly that way. If there was a demographic score, for example, that was extremely high and measured against another school, it had equal weight to a risk factor, but if the risk factor was lower, it might have moved it up a little bit. So there's some, it's not solely based on risk is what I'm trying to say. All right, the next slide should be another map. And this is all of the schools, and it's shown with a relative prioritization. So green is the highest, and then the yellow ones, orange, and the red ones. So it goes down from there. So, some of them are grouped together, and some of them are other places. So basically, they're all over the city. Okay, the next map. And this is one way that the city of Cincinnati has put their Vision Zero work and combined it with what we're doing here. They've been a very big partner on this, as has Sarah and a lot of other people in the school district. But they've planned some infrastructure improvements for this year, as you probably know. And a lot of those infrastructure improvements a good majority of them align with our priority schools, and they took this data that we collected into consideration when they developed these. And the rest of them also align with schools in Cincinnati, or a good number of the rest of them, sorry, also align with schools in Cincinnati, but they may not have rated in our top 10. So we put that down for a minute, and then we developed an infrastructure toolkit. And what we're talking about when we're talking about an infrastructure toolkit is we worked with the city of Cincinnati and the school district, several people within the school district, to develop some, and with ODOT as well. ODOT, I was going to say this in the beginning, but things weren't working out very well. ODOT is actually funding this plan. So the city is not funding it themselves. The school district is not funding it. ODOT is funding this for you guys. So then we put together an infrastructure toolkit. The Federal Highway Administration has a list of countermeasures, and they help, it has risk factors, and we can use that list of countermeasures to help determine what might be best for a specific community or for specific areas. So we took into effect the types of crashes and the things that are happening around your school district, and we developed a toolkit. I think it has about, this is just an example, I think there's about 30 items in it. And those items, the way that they're going to work together with the data analysis is when the city of Cincinnati is ready to do some more improvements, they'll be able to look at their data analysis as well as this toolkit and sort of marry those projects together and figure out which ones would be best in a specific area. And additionally, they've vetted all of the countermeasures that we've suggested, so there's not going to be anything in this plan that they're not comfortable implementing. All right, I'm going to move on, talk as fast as I can about the non-infrastructure. Fortunately, you already heard the video, so we don't have to take out time for that. But we vetted all of our non-infrastructure recommendations through Sarah Trimble-Oliver, David Trebert, and Ralph Ruan, and Lauren Johnson. So we've vetted everything through them to come up with some initiatives. One initiative is a school's travel safety committee, and these are the 4 kind of buckets that we think should be on it. But we're not saying that you necessarily have to develop a whole new committee. We think that this could go within the school district into a committee that may already be set up. The next slide is non-infrastructure details. And so we broke non-infrastructure details into a couple of buckets also. One is district-wide initiatives, and another one is initiatives that could be in an individual school if the school chose to do so. The first thing is, have the entire district participate in an October Walk to School event, just getting people out there and walking and just having a little party about it to help them understand that that is something that they can do. It's something fun, and that often encourages more walking to school. Lauren Johnson has agreed to work with us or work during the bus safety initiative and include safety initiatives for walking and biking as well, specifically walking in this situation. We've talked about some school-wide assemblies. And then we're working on also a template for the walk audit project, and we will be incorporating that as well. And we've also talked about developing some single curriculum videos. So for the individual schools, we're going to recommend a mini grant initiative as a possibility if funds are available. But there are also other places people can apply for mini grants, and we'll note some of those places in our final report. But also suggestions to how schools could implement things like safe driver campaigns, school-specific safety messages, and so on. And as we talked about you saw the little intro piece about the school walk audits. I've been working with Jeff Demare, as I said, from Western Hills University High School, and him and his students went out on these walk audits. Then the students did some individual ones on their own, and they gave a fantastic presentation to the advisory group. And it really helps us to understand what it is that they're dealing with and what their issues are, and move forward from there and help incorporate that into the plan. And just real quickly, I have 2 more slides. Go on to next steps. We're going to be turning in the draft plan for review very soon. I planned on turning it in a few weeks ago, but we had some issues that didn't get done quite yet. So hopefully within the next week to 2 weeks, that will be there. And once that's reviewed, we'll finalize it, and then you can go for approval. And you can even apply for funds before it's exactly ready, because you'd be applying for funds to ODOT, and they're the ones helping us do this plan. So that's all I have. Are there any questions? I will put the monitor back up for myself so that I can read any questions, since for some reason I can't hear anymore.
Okay, unfortunately, we're out of time. So if committee members have questions, if you can get them to me, and I will or get them to Ms. Bundays, you can refer them to Julie. But thank you very much. So we're going to close this meeting now, because we really need to move into our executive session. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.